The hardest entries yet are being written by the man who journaled every day he spent with Barbra Streisand. James Brolin has informed producers that he is unable to commit at this time. He made 3 proposals before she accepted. As the medical bills pile up, they are finally combining their disparate bank accounts. The pair is facing their greatest obstacle following their 25th anniversary last year. According to Hollywood insiders, Brolin turned down a $2 million role in order to stay at home. Perhaps the most devastating chapter of his life will come next. Craig Kenneth Brolin was born James Brolin on July 18, 1940, in the midst of a sweltering heat wave in Los Angeles. The day he arrived, the temperature was 103 degrees. Henry, his father and a prosperous contractor, got at the hospital just about. He arrived 12 minutes prior to Craig's birth. Henry was a rigid machine that managed his home. Craig was given daily tasks and weekly behavior evaluations starting when he was 4 years old. Helen, his mother, never disclosed to Craig that she had previously been a movie extra. She wished to keep him from becoming sidetracked from his studies. Craig's bad asthma contributed to his introverted demeanor as a child. He was hospitalized for 45 days when he was 7 years old. But his mind was acute. He disassembled and reassembled his father's watch when he was 9 years old. His mechanical skills were noted by his teachers, but no one could have predicted his obsession with James Dean. When Craig first saw East of Eden at the age of 15, everything changed. He surreptitiously rode his bike 17 miles to Griffith Park every Saturday for 6 months. He mimicked Dean's appearance, speech, and gait there by himself. He concealed 73 James Dean clippings in his room behind a poster. He purchased an 8mm camera with the more than $200 he saved from delivering papers. He had local children participate in 24 silent reenactments. Craig was silent for 11 days after Dean died in a vehicle accident. Without notifying him, his drama teacher sent one of his short films to UCLA. Nicholas Ray, who directed Dean in Rebel Without a Cause, gave it an honorable mention. Even though Craig's timidity caused him to throw up before every audition, the moment cemented his desire of becoming an actor. He was instructed to change his name in 1960. Brolin sounded too German, according to the studio. They even had statistics. Hard-sounding short names were easier to recognize. Craig had no desire to do it. He argued against it in 7 meetings. However, the studio prevailed. Because of his fascination with James Dean, they gave him James. It was more than a year before his father spoke to him again. In an attempt to explain, his mother mailed his updated headshots to family members. James needed medication to fall asleep for 214 nights. Following all of that, the studio informed him that he was behaving too much like Dean, which was exactly what they had requested. Brolin received tiny parts on the Batman television series in 1966. He played a bank teller first. He received more screen time since the director was pleased with the way he dropped the money bags. Unaware that he had already been on the show, a different director cast him as the Eraser months later. While performing his own stunts, he even broke 3 ribs. He was then chosen for a 3rd role by Adam West. He had previously been cast twice, but nobody on set realized it. Living in a 1958 Chevy and taking advantage of the gym showers at Fox Studios, he was homeless at the time. Everything collapsed in 1967. He starred in the movie The Cape Town Affair, which he predicted would be a failure. Regarding the poor script and cultural problems, he issued notes. Nobody paid attention. The movie was a failure. While visiting his mother in the hospital, he got dismissed. Even worse, Fox insisted that he reimburse $11,400 for his wages. He had no money. He was unemployed for 18 months. He went on to work as a mechanic in Van Nuys, repairing automobiles for clients who were unaware of his previous success. Then destiny intervened. Brolin's work ethic pleased a Universal executive who brought his car in for maintenance. He proposed to give him a screen test. The role that transformed Brolin's life resulted from that test. On Marcus Welby, MD, which aired from 1969 to 1976, He played Dr. Stephen Kiley. Brolin portrayed a youthful doctor who rode a motorcycle and collaborated with an older partner. The show was a big success. He received an Emmy in 1970. Then came 2 Golden Globes. The program had the highest viewership on ABC by its second season. It addressed severe illnesses like Alzheimer's, despair, and cancer. Despite objections about one episode concerning homosexuality, Brolin remained dedicated to producing stories that had substance. He played a more sinister part in Skyjacked in 1972. He portrayed a troubled Vietnam veteran who takes over an aircraft. He played Charlton Heston's opposite. Brolin gave the character a genuine feel, and the film was emotional and stressful. Even if his portrayal of the insane hijacker was exaggerated, critics felt he did it flawlessly. It demonstrated that he was more than just a composed doctor. Westworld followed in 1973. In a theme park where robots appeared and behaved like people, he portrayed John Blaine, a self-assured guest. Early digital effects were used for the first time in this science fiction blockbuster. In a terrible scene that occurs halfway through the film, Brolin's character is slain. The rest of the movie was much more gripping because of that twist. His portrayal added nuance and contrast to the movie. Brolin tackled horror in 1979. He appeared in the Amityville Horror as George Lutz. Before he became uneasy when reading the screenplay, he had doubts about the movie. By itself, his pants dropped off a chair. It was assigned to him. With over $80 million in box office receipts, the movie became a major success. Brolin's portrayal of a man gradually coming apart was terrifying. It mirrored worries about family pressure and financial ruin. In the late 1970s, many people felt that way. He had an altercation with co-star Margot Kidder behind the scenes, but the tension served the plot. Brolin's cameo in Pee-wee's Big Adventure in 1985 demonstrated his sense of humor. He portrayed a slick secret spy, a parody of Pee-wee. It was a witty reference to his James Bond-like role. He also starred in the TV series, which provided Brolin with a steady job for 5 years. He portrayed the sophisticated manager of a high-end hotel in San Francisco, Peter McDermott. Brolin was at the center of every show, which also featured fresh drama and new visitors. He even served as an episode director. During his period, he received 2 Golden Globe nominations. It also introduced him to a new person. He was going through a difficult divorce when Jan Smithers, his future wife, appeared as a guest star. In the meantime, on April 24, 1942, Barbra Streisand was born in Brooklyn. Emmanuel, a well-respected teacher, and Diana, a school secretary, were her parents. His annual salary of $4,200 was insufficient to sustain the family in their modest apartment. Barbara's father passed away from a seizure when she was just 15 months old. The family had to move in with her grandparents because they barely had $250 saved. Although she never met her father, Barbara eventually discovered a message he had left in her birth book. It seems to me that this one will be unique. Her mother remarried in 1949, and Barbara was given a half-sister. However, things didn't get any simpler. Her icy stepfather once threatened to shatter her spirit. Barbara left home at the age of 16 in 1958. She had no money and nowhere to go. She remained wherever she could for a year and a half. Old cots, couches from friends, and even summertime fire escapes. There were 12 records, 2 pairs of shoes, and 3 outfits in the one suitcase she had taped together. She continued to have perfect attendance at school even at that time. She worked part-time for 75 cents an hour and studied in cafes and libraries. Even though she only earning $17 a week, she managed to make ends meet by going to see her mother twice a week, right before supper, so she could eat without having to confess that she was homeless. For 3 years, she wore the same coat, mending it herself and even using leftover costume materials to dye it a different color. Barbara was earning slightly more than $46 a week as an usher at a theater by 1960. Over 100 times, she's seen the same play, The Sound of Music. She rehearsed singing in the theater by herself before work, and she committed every scene to memory. A stage manager heard her sing one evening. He asked who she was, assuming she was an understudy. "I'm auditioning," she declared firmly. However, she wasn't. She spontaneously performed for 3 casting directors who happened to be in the area. 2 days later, she was earning double her regular salary, $108, for a weekend performance in a nightclub. However, she was sacked by the theater for violating the regulations. It made no difference. She had just entered the entertainment industry for the first time. She had never taken a vocal lesson before. She gained experience by testing echoes and attracting small groups by singing in subways and stairwells. She was residing in a small, stuffy apartment with a friend, Barry Denon, later that year. He persuaded her to put 3 songs on tape. Barbra had to remain motionless and precisely 27 inches away from the microphone as they recorded on an outdated reel-to-reel recorder. In disbelief, Barry dropped his coffee mug as they played back the footage. Her voice was unlike anything he had ever heard, he claimed. In front of 14 music industry professionals, he played the tape. Some people didn't think it was real. One record executive refused to accept that it was a teenage kid without any expertise, believing it to have been professionally engineered. However, the truth was revealed, and the uncut tape eventually ended up at the Library of Congress. The night that everything changed then arrived. September was the month, 1960. Barbra, who was only 18, appeared on a nightclub stage wearing a dress that cost $6 from a used store. She had mismatched earrings. That month, she had already been turned down for 7 auditions, frequently on the grounds that she was too odd-looking. She was even told by one producer that she had a 5-cent look but a $1 million voice. However, she sang "Cry Me a River" that evening and then humorously reacted to the question, "Who's afraid of the big bad wolf?" The audience fell silent. They clapped for over 5 minutes after that. The judges gave her flawless ratings. It had never occurred there before. One unforgiving reviewer even said that her nose might become as famous as her voice. She had 23 paid assignments in 2 months. She had demonstrated that attractiveness was not a prerequisite for talent. She bravely changed her name in 1961, deleting the second A to become Barbra. She claimed that it set her apart. She continued to sing the strange tunes she liked, maintained her Brooklyn accent, and declined cosmetic surgery. Only 7 individuals attended the play one chilly night. She was indifferent. She gave a performance as though the venue was full. She refused to alter who she was in order to blend in, and it worked. Broadway followed. She portrayed Miss Marmalstein in the 1962 production of I Can Get It For You Wholesale. The day before the big audition, she had a temperature that was 103 degrees. Nevertheless, she appeared. She battled for her big sequence, which the directors nearly removed because it was too strange. She was forced to sing it 3 times by the audience on the first night. She only played a supporting role. However, the reviews exclusively discussed her. She was dubbed the funniest thing on Broadway since Fanny Brice by the media. Her initial weekly salary was $175, but her contract was renegotiated 5 times. Barbra's debut album was published in 1963. Only 10,000 copies were printed by Columbia Records. They believed it would fail. It included ballads and show tunes instead of popular music. However, in a single month, 150,000 copies were sold. She was in complete control. The tunes were her choice. She even chose a straightforward black and white photo instead of a color one. It defied every marketing recommendation. She received a Grammy for Record of the Year for that record. She outperformed Frank Sinatra. Some Grammy voters quit because they were so angry. "This isn't luck," she stated in her brief remarks. "When you ignore those who don't share your vision, this is what occurs." She portrayed Fanny Brice in Funny Girl a year later. She was not wanted in the role by Brice's daughter. Barbra, she claimed, was not attractive enough, too Jewish, and too Brooklyn. When they learned she had the part, investors withdrew over $1 million. Barbra, however, smashed it. She gave 867 performances in the role. Just missing 2 performances. She persisted despite having pneumonia. Her voice had a 3.5 octave range. Thus, she sung songs that were written specifically for her. She was soaked by a broken sprinkler in one moment, yet she continued to sing. It was a hit with the director, who included it in the show. The program received negative reviews when it relocated to London. However, by the conclusion, tickets were fetching £150 on the illicit market. At the time, a ridiculous sum. She signed a television contract with CBS in 1965. For 10 specials, it was worth $5 million. Even though she was just 23, she had all authority because to the contract. Without her consent, CBS was unable to make any changes. Her singing couldn't be interrupted by advertisements. My Name is Barbara, her debut special, defied all the rules. Singing by herself in the dark, she opened the show. Although executives were frightened, 71% of viewers tuned in that evening. She took home 5 Emmys. She even did her own editing for the entire show. Later, the director acknowledged that he simply did as she said. Barbra Streisand made movie history in 1968 after leaving the Broadway stage. She played the lead in Funny Girl, portraying the character that made her famous on Broadway, Fanny Brice. The movie gained enormous popularity and was the highest-grossing film of the year in the U.S. Barbra received the Academy Award for Best Actress because of how powerful her performance was. It was her first motion picture. The fact that she and Katharine Hepburn tied the only tie in that Oscar category ever was even more startling. The movie, which received 8 Oscar nominations, proved that Barbra was now more than simply a theatrical star. Funny Girl was saved as a national asset by the Library of Congress years later. Barbra, however, wasn't limited to musicals. She made a bold move with What's Up, Doc? In 1972, an outrageous comedy featuring Ryan O'Neal. She first told reporters that the script would fail because she detested it. However, significant alterations were made behind the scenes. O'Neal portrayed the serious character, while hers was rewritten to be more humorous. It was successful. The film became the 3rd most grossing film of the year due to its popularity. Critics complimented Barbra's comedic abilities, and she received $500,000 for the role, more than her co-star. The movie went on to become a classic and was listed among the best American comedy. Barbra co-starred with Robert Redford in The Way We Were the next year. It was set during a politically charged period in America and told the tale of a devoted Jewish activist and a charming writer. Despite having a $5 million budget, the movie made $50 million. It received Barbra a major Italian film prize and earned her another Oscar nomination. She sung the title song, which sold over 2 million copies and became the greatest hit of 1974. It was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame decades later. Barbra wanted more authority over her work by this point. She founded Barwood Films, her own production company, in 1972. Up the Sandbox, a bizarre yet daring movie about a bored housewife losing herself in her imagination, was her maiden endeavor. Despite not being a box office success, critics praised its fearless approach to feminism. Her on-screen persona was likened by critics to the likes of Greta Garbo. According to Roger Ebert, she portrayed a woman who didn't give a damn about what people thought, which was uncommon in movies at the time. Then, in 1976, A Star is Born was released. Barbra produced it in addition to acting in it. Evergreen, the movie's love ballad, became a huge hit. In addition to co-writing the song, Barbra became the first female Oscar winner for music composition. In addition, the song received a Golden Globe and a Grammy. Evergreen was later named one of her greatest songs ever, and her performance earned her another Golden Globe. Success like that wasn't achieved easily. Barbra pushed tenaciously for artistic control, particularly in 1983 when she directed her first film, Yentl. She spent 15 years making it. After 12 studios rejected her, one eventually gave her a budget of $14.05 million. She oversaw a workforce of 168 men, worked 20-hour days, and concealed herself in tight restraints. Several even wagered that she would fail, yet she disproved their predictions. The film earned more than $40 million. Nevertheless, one voter acknowledged that he didn't support her only because she was a woman. Women were barely directing 0.5% of major studio films at the time. The Golden Globes declined to nominate Barbra for primary direction, although Yentl received excellent reviews in 1984. Rather, they created a special one-time prize for her, Best Comedy or Musical Director. That category vanished the next year. At the ceremony, Barbra respectfully asked why she wasn't included with the others. Congress eventually used her case as evidence of gender bias in Hollywood because it became so well known. Years went by, but Barbra remained steadfast. She made a comeback to directing in 1991 with The Prince of Tides. The script was shaped over 3 years and 26 iterations. She even hired scores of people who had lost their houses to film in South Carolina, which was devastated by hurricanes. The film received 7 Oscar nominations and generated $63 million. As the first woman nominated in the 44-year history of the Directors Guild, she was finally honored. However, she was not nominated for Best Director at the Oscars. When people discovered that 94% of Oscar voters for directors were men, their indignation increased. Barbra made even more history in 1995. She became the first woman to receive the Directors Guild Awards to Pro Award for television, directing after directing her HBO concert special. There were 223 camera setups, 125 crew people, and 11 cameras on the show. During this time, Barbra was suffering from severe stage fright after forgetting the lines during a 1967 performance. She had avoided the stage for 27 years because of that dread. The special earned $93 million and attracted 26 million viewers. Barbra brought up the fact that women had only taken on 3.7% of TV directing positions throughout the event. She first fought the DGA on that same subject 25 years prior to her victory. Behind the scenes, Barbra's personal life was frequently traumatic. In 1963, she wed actor Elliot Good. In 1966, Jason, their son, was born. When Barbra learned she was pregnant, she called off a $1 million tour. She frequently brought Jason to work with her since she liked being a mother. However, the marriage suffered. Good battled substance abuse and gambling. Barbra was worried about the impact on their child of him selling their belongings to pay for his habits. They got divorced in 1971 after splitting up in 1969. On July 1, 1996, Barbra Streisand and James Brolin went on a blind date. It nearly didn't occur. Both had experienced unsuccessful relationships and were in their mid-50s. In 1971, Streisand got divorced. Brolin was $1. $4 million in debt and had recently divorced his second wife. They had already canceled twice before being put up by their friend Linda Bruckheimer. Brolin had originally planned to go out with another woman that evening, but he abruptly changed his mind. He was anxious, so he took a Valium. For a separate role, Streisand was surprised to see him clean-shaven instead of the gruff, bearded man she had envisioned. In the end, they spoke for 6 hours. Later on, they discovered that they were born in Los Angeles, only 3.4 miles apart. Streisand asked him, "Who messed up your hair?" Throughout the first 30 seconds, even though she didn't mean any harm, Brolin was deeply affected. In 11 years, his ex-wife had never made any remarks about his appearance. One comment stayed with him. He nearly left, but he stayed because of something in her gaze. At 3:27 a.m. That evening came to an end. With her requesting a strand of his hair, she held onto it. Together with a handwritten letter, it is now framed in their house. She later acknowledged that she believed he was different from the 28 blind dates she had gone on in the previous 3 years, even though they had only been together for 17 minutes. Brolin made 3 attempts to pop the question. They first met in a hot air balloon above Napa Valley 87 days later. He presented her with a $250,000 diamond weighing 3.9 carats. "No," she said. Following a negative experience with a previous fiancé, she was placed on a 2-year rule. The second proposal was made in New York on New Year's Eve 1997. He played a tune from her early years. In front of 14 companions, he knelt down. Once more, she refused. The third attempt was successful. On March 15, 1998, she was having a picnic at her house in Malibu. He handed her a 24-page letter this time, listing 98 reasons why they should be together. He was unaware at the time that she had been secretly engaged to another guy when they first met. She only disclosed this information in her memoir years later. After their 5th date, she ended things. On July 1st, 1998, precisely 2 years after their first date, they were married. $1. $4 million was spent on the wedding. It took place at Streisand's house in Malibu. There was strict security, there were NDA with $250,000 penalties, a no-fly zone, and 37 guards. At 8:47 p.m., the ceremony got underway. The precise moment they met. 15,000 orchids and white roses were flown in from 4 different nations. Tom Hanks, Oprah Winfrey, the Clintons, and Marlon Brando were among the attendees. The dress that Streisand wore had a 27-foot train. Brolin sported diamond cufflinks and an Armani suit. A children's choir from her charity sang a song she penned for the event, "I've Finally Found You." At 11:43 p.m., Brolin spoke at the reception. It was 273 words long. It was framed by Streisand. "Every night is a new adventure," he remarked. "Time is wasted sleeping. I'm eager to see her once more in the morning." He had spent 27 years fighting sleeplessness. She turned into his remedy. Prior to the wedding, they had shared 642 nights together. They completed crossword puzzles, read poetry in bed, and talked about memories they kept to themselves. Brolin also performed Barbra's Lullaby, a piano tune he had covertly studied, that evening, misspelling her name as a joke. According to John Travolta, Brolin kept a journal detailing their daily activities together, which he intended to present to her on their 25th wedding anniversary. In 2023, they accomplished that milestone. They maintained several bank accounts from the beginning of their marriage. It was referred to as bifurcation. After losing $3 million in his second divorce, Brolin came up with the notion. Every Tuesday, he claimed, they even divide the cost of dinner. Brolin had $60 million, whereas Streisand had $400 million. Thus, this maintained equality. They just had one account between them. With the house costing $800,000, Brolin claimed in a 2023 interview that this arrangement prevented the financial disputes that destroyed previous Hollywood marriages. The COVID-19 lockdown strengthened their relationship even further. Many couples fell in love again after their breakup. They were together for 425 consecutive nights. It was 6:45 a.m. when they awoke, prepared breakfast, and practiced meditation. Each of the 37 puzzles they completed represented a potential year of marriage. They acted out sequences in costume while watching Bridgerton and The Crown twice. During lockdown, they even kept a 278-page journal, which Brolin said might be turned into a biography. They set up shop in their $35,000 Swedish mattress. It was referred to as the boardroom. It had places for documents and cushions that could be used as laptop stands, as well as unique support settings for both of them. From that bed, they made important career choices. Lying there, Streisand even composed songs for her 2018 album. On that mattress, they slept for 4 to 6 hours every day. It cost $175,000 to soundproof their bedroom. That quiet place was where most of their best ideas came from, Brolin remarked. They went for walks when they fought. It wasn't only arbitrary. They were quite strict. They strolled around their 3.2-acre estate in opposing directions without phones and taking deep breaths every 30 steps. They came back after 17 minutes and wrote about their feelings in their journals. At least 217 times they employed this technique. They once went on 7 walks over 3 days in 2019 after arguing over Streisand's book. They requested separate walking lanes from hotel staff even when on vacation. According to Brolin, walking allowed their brains to spontaneously solve difficulties and relax. Additionally, Streisand continued to pursue her concern for women's heart health. In 2014, she started the Fight the Lady Killer campaign. The fact that heart disease kills more women than other cancers combined astounded her. She advocated for more awareness and assisted in funding a cardiac center at Cedars-Sinai. In 2018, she delivered a significant lecture at the National Institutes of Health. She discussed how women frequently receive worse cardiac care than males. 1 in 4 women died as a result of her campaign compared to 1 in 3. Her memoir, My Name is Barbra, took 10 years to write. It was published in 2023 and has 970 pages. All of it was handwritten by her. In the 1990s, she had begun to consider it. She was even asked to write it by Jacqueline Kennedy once. Its flair and honesty were lauded by critics. She probably wrote most of it in bed on their fancy mattress, Brolin said. Brolin is still employed at the age of 83 as of 2025. Don't plan on stopping, he told People magazine. Old People magazine. He was narrating the last season of Sweet Tooth and filming Ransom Canyon. Despite making fewer films, he made up for it with a lot of them, he laughed. 600 TV hours and 97 movies. He claimed that the upcoming project is what most excites him. Brolin returned to the Western genre with Ransom Canyon. He portrayed Cap Fuller, a rancher who passes away in episode 9. His character should have stayed longer, he desired. Additionally, it was Netflix's first significant solar-powered production. It was shot in New Mexico, spanning 150 kilometers. Brolin completed narrating all 3 of Sweet Tooth seasons around the same time. He discussed his extensive background with horses and claimed that while performing gave him energy, directing remained his favorite.